The first step is to update our title block and scale the title block twice as large in order to fit our three-dimensional work. So update this to say Axle Flange 3D. Update your date. The scale will be full size still. And this will be drawing Lesson1B. To scale the drawing, type in scale, select all portions of your title block and border, including the text, everything except for what's inside the border. After you click on scale and select your objects, click enter. The base point will be this location right here. Type in 2 for 2 times as large. And now we have enough room for our three-dimensional work. Second step, we're going to copy some of the features of here and move them over to the side for us to work with. So type in copy or select the copy command. We'll pick side of this axis. If something doesn't get selected, that's fine. You can pick them by hand. Enter a base point. You could pick here, for example. And we'll move it over. Keep ortho on and keep things aligned. We will not need all of the features of this part. We will need to trim off so that we have just this outline you see here. Let's move everything to the same layer. That layer is going to be our construction layer, so that everything looks as if it's one object. It is currently not one object. As you can see, the parts are treated individually. So we need to turn it into one solid object for us to revolve it around this axis. I made a new layer. I would like for you to make a new layer called 3D. 3D is going to be a color of your choice. Please do so. You can make it current. In fact, that's what you should do now because we're going to revolve. When you revolve an object, it'll take the characteristics of the layer that is current. To make this a solid object, you type in a command called region, R-E-G-I-O-N. Select the objects you want to region and hit enter. You will see a message on your screen that says one region is created, and it adopts the color of the layer in which it was active. I am going to move this back to the construction layer, as you see here. If it did not make a region, you have possible errors, gaps, overlapping lines, breaks, areas that need to be trimmed, and you'll need to fix that. If you are not successful with this, email me, let me know. I'll give you a suggestion of how to overcome that situation. Switch to 3D modeling in order for us to use some commands that we need for the rest of this part. Click on solid. You're looking for the revolve command. Click revolve. The first step is to select the objects you're going to revolve, which is this. Hit enter. It's going to ask you for 2 points on an axis, in other words, the endpoints of this line. So we'll pick both of those. And you can see it's already working. You can see the colors change to the layer of the 3D layer. It's going to ask for an angle of revolution. Hit the down arrow on your keyboard and pick 360. We now have a three-dimensional representation of our part. To see it, you'll need to click on View and use a couple commands, one of them being Views. We'll switch to what's called Southwest Isometric. The next step is to add 4 holes to the object, which we'll later subtract. Those holes will be located here. We need to take advantage of our top view to do that. We're going to use a command called align, A-L-I-G-N, and this is how that command works. Select your objects, hit enter. You're going to pick what are called source points and destination points. You need 2 or 3 of them. In this case, we need 3. We're going to be object snapping to quadrant and take advantage of these 4 points on the base of our part to move them to the quadrants of this circle, because we're going to work it up here. If quadrant is not on, right click on object snaps and turn on quadrant. So for the first point, the first source point will be the quadrant of this base right here, and we're going to move that to the quadrant over here. This quadrant is going to move here. The reason why we're switching directions is because we need to flip it over. The third quadrant is going to be from this base point to this base point, and there you'll see it move automatically and rotate to your part. The next step is to extrude these 4 holes from our array and subtract them out of the part. We cannot extrude an array of objects, so we need to separate them from the array. To do that, you're going to use a command called explode. Do not use this command frequently. Pick explode, select your array of objects, and hit enter. It'll break them apart and move them to the 0 layer. And you can see your layers here, of course, and these are going to be on the 0 layer. That's alright for what we're doing. So pick extrude, select your 4 holes, click on enter. You will see automatically you could use extrude in a couple ways. You can just extend manually, up or down, or you can type in distances in that blue area you see there. Because we don't concern ourselves with the height, just extrude at any length above the base of the part. And there they are. In order to see them, you can switch to various options. I'm going to choose shaded with edges, and you can see that there. Now to subtract them, we're going to use a command called subtract. It's in the solid ribbon. Pick subtract. It's also under home, this symbol here. Pick subtract. To learn how to use subtract, you could hover over the tooltip and read it. The concept is this: pick the larger object, hit the enter key, and then pick the smaller objects you want to subtract by making sure you're selecting the edges of the part. Hit enter when you're done selecting the objects, and you'll see they've been subtracted out to create the holes you see there. The next step is to draw the grease fitting that's going to be attached to our axle flange. You need to copy this area here, including this center line, and a lot of the features in here. I've already done that. I'll show you what that looks like. I've already copied it over. Here's the axis. I kept this section of it, and I drew 2 lines parallel to the other 3 lines here. And now I need to trim these off. Because I'm going to use the Revolve command, so all this will go away. Type in region, R-E-G-I-O-N. Select the objects that we're going to make into a solid part, and click enter. I just thought of something which I'm going to show you. This is not going to work, and I'll explain it to you, but I'm going to draw it anyway. Click on Revolve, select this feature here, enter. The axis is going to be these 2 points here and here. We're going to do the full 360, so hit the down arrow, choose 360, and we're going to move this into place using the align command. I'm going to show you why it doesn't work, but then we'll do it the right way. But we're going to align it to here. This axis here is the same as this axis here from our previous step. Type in align, A-L-I-G-N. Select these objects and this center line. Click enter. Our alignment is going to be here to the top of this, here to the bottom of that axis, and there's nothing else I can move onto here, so I'm just going to hit enter. It's going to ask me, do I want to scale the objects? The answer is going to be no. You're going to see it move and rotate into place. Okay? Now that that's done, I'm going to show you why this was incorrect. Let me rotate the block using orbit. See the flaw? That shouldn't be happening. So I should not pre-fillet this. I need to do that after I move it into place. So let me show you the correct way of doing this. Let me undo the steps. Back to our two-dimensional part. Okay. Use the explode command. Now this is its individual parts. I typed in explode. Let me erase that. But we do need that. We don't need this. Type in draw a line from here to perpendicular. Trim this off. Okay. Use the region command. Select these 4 objects to turn these 4 separate lines into a region. Hit enter. Your axis is going to be, hit enter. The region command is finished. We now have a part. Let's verify that the layer is on. It's on the 3D layer. Click on solid. Click on revolve. Select this object. It's a region, so identified it. Hit enter. Pick 2 points on an axis, which are these 2 points on the line. We must start revolving, so hit the down arrow, so you can choose 360. Now we need to move this to our part, so we can fillet it. Use the align command, A-L-I-G-N. Pick everything. Enter. Our first source point would be the end point of here to here, because these are the same axis. Here to here. We have no other points we can use. I want you to just hit enter and answer this question. Scale objects based on alignment points. Say no. And now they're moved into place. Let me orbit this shape. And turn on your view shaded with lines, so you can see the part a little better as we do the next step, which is to fillet the part. I'm using orbit. If you don't have this feature right here, you can type in orbit. They're also found here. In order to fillet, you need to union the parts together. Click on union, which is right here. It's also located here. You need to union this part and this part to become one. You pick them both. After you're done selecting objects, click enter, and now they become one object. In this case, we have to use union in order to create a fillet. Fillet requires edge to be one part of one object. Before we select this object, let's set the radius. The radius should be 0.125. I can see that it already is, so I don't need to type this in, but I will anyway. And then select this edge. It found that source. Hit enter. You might have to enter twice, but there it has made a fillet that wraps around this cylinder. And it worked the way we should, as you can see that those reference lines right there. And that ends that step. One last thing we need to do is we need to show the broken out section of this feature, being that we have one